The little girl placed her last coins on the table and whispered, "I want to buy a dad." Not knowing the broken man in front of her had spent his whole life wishing someone would choose him too. Hello beautiful souls and welcome to Ms. Love Stories channel, the place where love, drama, and unforgettable moments come alive. I'm so thrilled you're here, ready to dive into stories that will make your heart race, bring tears, and leave you believing in the power of love. Before we begin, I want to get to know all of you. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because in the next video, I'll give a special shout out to some of you amazing viewers from around the world. I can't wait to see how far our love story family reaches. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, so you never miss a single emotional journey. Get ready to feel, laugh, cry, and fall in love all over again. Because every story we share here is for you. Now, the story begins. Rose. The rain had been falling all morning. Not the loud, angry kind, but the quiet, stubborn drizzle that soaked into everything: clothes, skin, even hope. Andrew barely noticed it. From the back seat of his black luxury car, he stared blankly through the tinted window as the city blurred past him. People rushed along the sidewalks, clutching umbrellas, chasing time, chasing something he no longer believed in. "Sir, we're running late for the meeting," his driver said gently. Andrew didn't respond immediately. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Perfect suit, sharp jawline, eyes that held nothing. "Cancel it," he said finally. There was a pause. "Sir, I said cancel it." The driver nodded, though Andrew could see the confusion in his eyes through the mirror. Meetings, contracts, millions. None of it mattered. Not anymore. Andrew leaned back, closing his eyes, but the silence didn't bring peace. It brought memories. A small voice, a tiny hand gripping his finger, laughter that used to fill a home that now felt like a museum of ghosts. His jaw tightened. "Stop the car." "Sir, we're in the middle of." "I said stop." The car slowed, pulling over beside a quiet roadside cafe. Nothing fancy, just a worn-out sign and a flickering light. Andrew stepped out before the driver could open the door. The rain kissed his face, cold and real. For a moment, he just stood there, letting it hit him, as if he deserved it. Across the street, under a broken shelter, stood a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her dress was too thin for the weather, faded from too many washes that never quite made it clean. Her shoes didn't match and one of them had a hole near the toe. But it wasn't the poverty that made people look twice. It was her eyes. Big, quiet, searching. She clutched a small, worn purse in both hands, holding it close to her chest like it was the most valuable thing she owned. Michelle had been standing there for almost an hour, watching, waiting. Her stomach growled softly, but she ignored it. She had learned how to ignore a lot of things. Hunger, cold, loneliness. But today felt different. Today she had a plan. She opened her little purse just enough to peek inside. A few coins clinked together. Everything she had managed to save over weeks. Not from allowance. Not from gifts. From small errands. From returning bottles. From doing things no child should have to do alone. She swallowed hard. "It's enough," she whispered to herself. "It has to be enough." Because today Michelle wasn't trying to buy food. She was trying to buy something much more important. Something she had never had. A father. Andrew pushed open the cafe door. A soft bell ringing above him. Warmth wrapped around him instantly, along with the smell of coffee and freshly baked bread. For a second, just a second, it felt like stepping into a different life. He chose a corner seat, far from everyone else. "Black coffee," he told the waitress. She nodded and left. Andrew rested his elbows on the table, staring at nothing. Conversations buzzed around him, laughter here and there, but it all sounded distant, like he was underwater. Disconnected. Untouchable. Alone. Outside, Michelle watched him through the window. Her small fingers tightened around her purse. "That one," she murmured. There was something about him. Not the expensive clothes. Not the car. Something else. Something sad. She didn't fully understand it, but she felt it. And somehow it made her brave. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out from the shelter and crossed the street. The rain soaked her instantly, but she didn't stop. Not this time. Inside the cafe, Andrew had just taken his first sip of coffee when the door opened again. The bell rang. Soft. Fragile. He didn't look up at first. But then. A presence. Small. Hesitant. Standing right in front of his table. Andrew frowned slightly and lifted his gaze. And that's when he saw her. The little girl. Drenched. Shivering. Eyes filled with something he couldn't quite name. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world seemed to pause. Then she slowly stepped forward and placed her tiny purse on the table. Coins clinked softly inside. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. "Mister," she said, barely above a whisper. I want to buy a dad." Speech balloon. What would you do if a child walked up to you and said this? Tell me in the comments. The cafe fell silent. Not completely, but enough that the moment stretched, heavy and fragile, like glass about to shatter. Andrew didn't move. At first, he thought he had misheard her. "I what?" His voice came out lower than expected, rough, like it hadn't been used for anything real in a long time. The little girl swallowed. Her fingers trembled slightly as they rested on the edge of the table, but she didn't pull them back. "I want to buy a dad," she repeated, a little clearer this time. "I brought everything I have." She nudged the small purse forward. The coins inside clinked again, too light, too few, yet somehow unbearably loud. Andrew stared at it. Then at her. Then back at the coins. Something inside his chest shifted, sharp, uncomfortable. "Where are your parents?" he asked, his tone instinctively guarded. The question lingered. The girl looked down for a brief second, her lips pressing together. "My mom," she started, then stopped. "She's not here anymore." Andrew's jaw tightened. "And your father?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't have one." Simple. Flat. Like she had said it so many times, it had stopped hurting out loud. But not inside. Andrew leaned back slightly, studying her now. Not as an interruption, but as something real. Too real. "You can't just walk into a place and buy a father," he said, more firmly this time. "That's not how it works." The girl nodded quickly, as if she expected that answer. "I know," she whispered. "But I didn't know where else to go." Her voice cracked, just a little. And that was enough. Andrew felt it. That tiny fracture in her strength. It hit him harder than it should have. "Why me?" he asked. Out of all the people in the room, all the faces, all the lives she could have chosen to interrupt. Why him? The girl looked at him again, really looked this time. Not at his suit. Not at the watch on his wrist. But at his eyes. "Because," she hesitated, searching for the right words. Then she said it. "Because you look lonely." The words landed like a blow. Andrew froze. For a second the cafe disappeared. The sounds faded. All he could hear was that sentence echoing in his mind. "You look lonely." His fingers tightened around his coffee cup. Lonely? He almost laughed. He had everything people spent their entire lives chasing. Money, power, influence. But none of those things had ever sat across from him and said his name with warmth. None of them had stayed. None of them had filled the silence. Andrew placed the cup down carefully. "You don't know anything about me," he said quietly. The girl didn't argue. She just nodded again. "I know," she said softly. "But I think I would be a good daughter." That did it. Something broke. Not loudly. Not visibly. But deep enough that Andrew had to look away for a moment. A good daughter. The phrase twisted inside him, dragging up memories he had spent years trying to bury. A small laugh. Tiny footsteps running through a hallway. A voice calling, "Daddy." He blinked hard. "No. Not here. Not now." "Listen," he said, his tone shifting, less harsh but still controlled. "What's your name?" "Michelle." "Michelle," he repeated, as if testing the weight of it. "How old are you?" 7. 7. The same age. Andrew exhaled slowly, his hand brushing over his face. This wasn't coincidence. It couldn't be. "Where do you live?" he asked. Michelle hesitated this time. Her eyes flickered toward the window, then back to him. "I stay nearby." Not an answer. Not really. Andrew noticed, and that knot in his chest tightened again. You shouldn't be out here alone, he said. I'm used to it. The words came out too fast. Too practiced. Andrew's gaze sharpened. No child should ever sound used to being alone. Who takes care of you? He pressed. Michelle looked down at the table, tracing a small circle with her finger. I take care of myself, she said quietly. The simplicity of it made the air feel heavier. Andrew leaned back again, exhaling slowly. This was ridiculous. He had a life, responsibilities, a world that didn't pause for moments like this. He could call someone. Social services. Authorities. That's what people like him were supposed to do. Fix things from a distance. But his eyes drifted back to the purse, to the coins, to the tiny, desperate offering of a child who didn't know any other way to ask for love. And then back to her face. Waiting. Not demanding. Not expecting. Just hoping. Is it enough? Michelle asked suddenly. Andrew blinked. What? She pushed the purse a little closer, her voice barely holding together now. For a dad, she said. Is it enough? Silence. Heavy, crushing silence. Andrew looked at the coins again, then at her. And for the first time in years, he didn't have an answer. The waitress approached slowly, uncertain. Sir, is everything okay? Andrew didn't look at her. He couldn't. Because if he broke eye contact now, he wasn't sure he'd look back. Yes, he said finally, though his voice lacked conviction. The waitress nodded awkwardly and stepped away. But the moment remained. Unresolved. Unavoidable. Andrew leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. Michelle, you don't need to pay for a father. Her brows furrowed, confusion mixing with fragile hope. Then how do you get one? She asked. Andrew opened his mouth, closed it again. Because the truth was, he didn't know. Not anymore. Speech balloon. Do you think Andrew should walk away? Or is this moment about to change both their lives forever? Tell me what you think. Andrew stood up abruptly. The chair scraped against the floor, the sharp sound cutting through the fragile stillness between them. I can't do this. The words came out faster than he intended, almost like an instinct. A reflex. Michelle flinched slightly. Not because he was loud, but because she had heard those words before. Many times. From many people. Andrew reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Without looking at her, he placed a few large bills on the table. Far more than the coins she had offered. This will help you, he said, his tone firm, controlled. Get something to eat. Find somewhere warm. Michelle stared at the money. But she didn't touch it. I don't want money, she said quietly. Andrew froze for half a second. Then forced himself to move again, grabbing his coat. This isn't a game, Michelle, he added, his voice tightening. You can't just. I know it's not a game. Her voice broke through his sentence. Small. Shaking. But louder than anything she had said before. The cafe turned again, eyes slowly drifting toward them, but neither of them noticed. I know it's not a game, she repeated, softer now, her eyes glistening. That's why I came. Andrew clenched his jaw. Don't look at her. Don't stop. Just walk away. That's what he told himself. That's what he had always done. But his feet didn't move. You don't understand, he muttered, almost to himself. No, Michelle said. You don't understand. That made him look at her. Really look. Tears had gathered in her eyes, but she was fighting them. Holding them back with a strength that didn't belong to someone her age. I waited a long time before I asked, she said, her voice trembling. I watched other kids with their dads. I listened to how they talked, what they did. She swallowed hard. I tried to be brave without one. I really did. Andrew felt something twist painfully in his chest. But it gets really quiet, she continued. At night. The words slowed. Heavier now. And when it's quiet, it feels like maybe I wasn't worth staying for. That hit him. Hard. Too hard. Andrew inhaled sharply, looking away again, his hand tightening into a fist. Stop, he said under his breath. Michelle shook her head. No, she whispered. Because if I don't say it now, I might never say it again. Andrew's pulse quickened. This wasn't supposed to happen. He wasn't supposed to feel this. I don't need a perfect dad. she went on, her voice softer now, almost breaking. I just need someone who won't leave. Silence. A deep, suffocating silence. Andrew closed his eyes. And suddenly, he wasn't in the cafe anymore. He was standing in a hospital room. White walls. Machines beeping. A small hand in his. Daddy, you'll stay, right? His daughter's voice. Weak. Fading. And him unable to answer. Because sometimes staying wasn't a choice. Sometimes life took that away from you. Andrew opened his eyes abruptly, the memory hitting him like a wave. I already failed once, he said, his voice low, strained. Michelle frowned slightly. What? He shook his head quickly, as if trying to erase the words. Nothing. It doesn't matter. But it did. It mattered more than anything. I'm not who you think I am, he continued, stepping back slightly. I'm not good at this. You don't have to be perfect, Michelle said gently. Andrew let out a hollow laugh. You don't understand, he repeated. Then help me understand, she replied. That stopped him. Again. She wasn't backing down. Not with anger. Not with pressure. But with something far more dangerous. Patience. Hope. Andrew ran a hand through his hair, pacing a step away from the table, then back again. I don't do attachments, he admitted finally. They don't last. Michelle tilted her head slightly. Nothing lasts forever, she said. But that doesn't mean it's not worth having. Andrew stared at her. Where did she learn that? What kind of life teaches a child to speak like that? You're asking for something I can't give, he said, softer now. Michelle shook her head. No, she said. I'm asking for something you're afraid to give. The truth of it landed between them. Sharp. Unavoidable. Andrew felt it. And for a moment, just a moment, his defenses cracked. But then, reality rushed back in. Responsibility. Fear. Loss. Everything he had buried. Everything he had survived by avoiding. He stepped back again. I'll call someone, he said quickly. They can help you properly. Find you a place. People trained for this. Michelle's face fell. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just quietly. Like a light dimming. I don't want people, she said. I wanted you. Those 4 words echoed louder than anything else she had said. Andrew felt his chest tighten again, but this time, he forced himself to ignore it. He reached for his phone. This was the right thing. The safe thing. The logical thing. But his hand hovered over the screen. Because somewhere deep inside, a question whispered. If you walk away now, will you regret it for the rest of your life? Outside, the rain had started to fall harder. Inside, 2 broken lives stood at the edge of something neither of them fully understood. And neither of them was ready to let go, even if they pretended they were. Speech balloon. If you were Andrew, would you protect your heart or take the risk? Let me know in the comments. Andrew's thumb hovered over his phone. 1 call. That was all it would take. A number dialed. A problem handed over. A life returned to the system. Clean. Simple. Distant. Safe. But his hand didn't move. Sir. The driver's voice suddenly broke through as he stepped inside the cafe, slightly out of breath. I've been looking for you. The storm is getting worse. We should leave now. As if on cue, thunder rumbled across the sky, low and heavy. The lights flickered once. Then again. Michelle instinctively stepped closer to the table. Andrew glanced outside. The rain had turned violent. Sheets of water slamming against the glass, blurring everything beyond it into chaos. Roads are already flooding, the driver added. Traffic is at a standstill. Andrew exhaled slowly, lowering his phone. Of course. Of all moments now. He turned back toward Michelle. She was still there. Still waiting. Still looking at him like he was her answer. Before he could say anything, the cafe lights suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the room. A few people gasped. Someone dropped a cup. It shattered loudly on the floor. For a second, there was only the sound of rain and uncertainty. Then the backup generator kicked in, casting a dim, yellow glow across the room. Everything felt smaller. Closer. Trapped. I don't like the dark. The words came softly, barely audible. Andrew looked down. Michelle had moved closer without realizing it, her small hand now lightly gripping the edge of his coat. Not pulling. Not demanding. Just holding on. He stiffened at first. The contact unfamiliar. Unwanted. Necessary. "It's just a power cut," he said, his voice calmer than he felt. "It'll come back." Michelle nodded, but her grip didn't loosen. Another crack of thunder made her flinch. Andrew noticed. And something in him shifted again. "Sit," he said quietly, gesturing to the chair across from him. She obeyed immediately. No hesitation. As if she trusted him already. That thought unsettled him. Minutes passed. The storm didn't ease. If anything, it grew louder. The cafe owner moved around, lighting a few candles. Shadows danced along the walls, turning strangers into silhouettes. Andrew sat back down slowly, his phone now resting uselessly on the table. "No signal," he muttered. The driver checked his own. "Same here, sir. We might be stuck for a while." Andrew nodded once, then looked at Michelle again. Still there. Still watching him. Still hoping. "Did you come here alone?" he asked, his voice softer now, less defensive. Michelle hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." "How far is nearby?" he pressed. She glanced toward the window again. "Not far." Still vague. Still hiding something. Andrew noticed but didn't push. "Not yet." Another silence settled between them. But this one felt different. Less sharp. Less resistant. More inevitable. "Are you cold?" Andrew asked after a moment. Michelle shrugged slightly, though her shoulders were clearly tense from the chill. Andrew sighed quietly, removing his coat. For a second he hesitated, then handed it to her. "Here." Michelle blinked in surprise. "Really? Just take it." She slipped it on carefully, the fabric swallowing her small frame. The sleeves hung past her hands, but she didn't mind. She smiled. A small, genuine smile. And somehow, that felt more valuable than anything Andrew had seen all day. "Thank you," she whispered. Andrew looked away almost immediately. He wasn't used to gratitude like that. Not for something so simple. "Why did you really choose me?" he asked again after a while. Michelle pulled the coat tighter around herself, thinking. "You looked like you needed someone," she said finally. Andrew let out a quiet breath. "That's not a good reason." "It was for me." He glanced at her. She wasn't smiling now. Just honest. "Everyone else looked busy," she added. "Or happy. And that's a problem?" he asked. Michelle shook her head. "No, but people who are happy don't usually want new people." That landed deep. Andrew leaned back slightly, absorbing her words. "So you chose the broken one," he said dryly. Michelle tilted her head. "I didn't say broken." "You didn't have to." She studied him for a moment, then said something that made his chest tighten again. "Broken things can still be loved." Andrew's breath caught slightly. For a moment he didn't respond. Couldn't. Because no one had ever said something like that to him. Not in a long time. Maybe ever. Another loud crack of thunder shook the windows. This time Michelle didn't just flinch. She reached out, instinctively, and grabbed Andrew's hand. Tightly. Andrew froze. Every instinct told him to pull away. To create distance. To protect himself. But he didn't. Her hand was small. Cold. Fragile. And yet, the way she held on to him felt like he was something solid in her world. Something safe. He swallowed. "You're not scared of asking strangers for fathers," he said quietly. "But thunder scares you?" Michelle gave a small, embarrassed nod. "It's loud," she admitted. Andrew almost smiled. Almost. Time passed slowly. The storm showed no sign of stopping. The outside world had faded away completely. No calls. No meetings. No expectations. Just a dim cafe. A broken man. And a little girl who refused to leave. "Andrew." He blinked. It was the first time she said his name. "How do you know my name?" he asked. She pointed gently toward the table. "His business card. He must have left it there earlier." "Oh." Silence again. Then, "Andrew," she repeated softly. "If I didn't have enough money." He looked at her. "Could I still stay a little longer?" The question wasn't about time. He knew that. She wasn't asking about minutes. She was asking about presence, belonging, permission to not be alone. Andrew felt something inside him give way. Not completely, but enough. You can stay, he said quietly. Michelle's shoulders relaxed slightly. Okay. And just like that, they were no longer two strangers trying to walk away. They were two people, stuck together. Not by choice, not by logic, but by something far more dangerous. Connection. Speech balloon, do you think this storm is just weather? Or is it fate forcing them together? Tell me what you feel. The storm didn't let up. If anything, it deepened, rain pounding harder, wind howling like something unseen was trying to claw its way in. Inside the cafe, the world had shrunk to candlelight and quiet conversations. Andrew and Michelle sat across from each other. But something had changed. The distance between them was no longer just physical. It was emotional. And it was slowly closing. Michelle sat curled slightly in the oversized coat, her small fingers wrapped around the sleeve, as if it could protect her from more than just the cold. Andrew watched her without meaning to. The way she stayed alert. The way her eyes flickered toward the door every few minutes. Like she was expecting someone. Or afraid someone might come. You keep looking outside, he said quietly. Michelle froze for a moment. Then forced a small shrug. I just like the rain. Andrew didn't respond. Because it wasn't true. He could tell. Michelle, he said gently. Where do you actually go when you leave here? Silence. Heavy. Careful. She looked down at the table again, tracing invisible lines with her finger. I told you nearby. That's not an answer. Her lips pressed together. And for the first time since she walked into his life, she looked unsure. Not scared of the storm. Not scared of him. But scared of the truth. Andrew leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. I'm not asking to hurt you, he said. I just need to understand. Michelle's fingers tightened. You might not like it, she whispered. Andrew's expression didn't change. Try me. Another rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. Michelle flinched again. But this time she didn't reach for him. She stayed still. Like she was bracing herself for something bigger. I used to live with my mom, she began slowly. Andrew didn't interrupt. Didn't move. Didn't even blink. I don't remember my dad, she continued. She said he left before I was born. Her voice was steady, but thin. Like it could break if pushed too far. She worked a lot, Michelle added. But she always came home. Andrew felt something tighten in his chest. Always came home. Past tense. He already knew where this was going. She got sick, Michelle said, her voice dropping lower now. At first, she said it was nothing, just tired. Michelle swallowed. But then she stopped going to work. Her fingers trembled slightly against the table. And then she stopped getting out of bed. Andrew closed his eyes briefly. He had heard stories like this before. But hearing it from her was different. It wasn't just a story. It was her life. I tried to help, Michelle said quickly, almost defensively. I made her tea. I stayed quiet so she could sleep. Her voice cracked. I thought if I was good enough she would get better. Andrew's jaw tightened. That dangerous, familiar guilt. The kind that children carry when they don't understand that some things can't be fixed by love alone. She told me, Michelle continued, her voice barely holding together now. She told me it wasn't my fault. Andrew looked at her again. Really looked. Tears were falling now. Quietly. Without resistance. But she still left, Michelle whispered. The words hit like a hammer. Andrew inhaled sharply. Because in that moment, he didn't just hear her. He felt her. The cafe faded again. The storm faded. And Andrew was back in that hospital room. Holding a hand that was slipping away. Hearing words that sounded too much like goodbye. It's not your fault. And yet, the emptiness that followed had always felt like punishment. I stayed in the house for a while, Michelle went on, wiping her cheeks quickly, as if she didn't want to make a scene. I thought maybe she would come back. Andrew didn't speak. Didn't dare. But she didn't. The silence that followed was heavier than anything said. So, where did you go? Andrew asked softly. Michelle hesitated. then finally answered. There's a small place, behind the old market, she said. Some people sleep there. I found a corner. Andrew's heart dropped. A corner. Not a home. Not a bed. A corner. And you've been there alone, he asked. She nodded. I'm careful, she added quickly. I don't talk to everyone. Andrew exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. This wasn't just a sad story. This was a reality. And it had been happening, while he sat in boardrooms arguing over numbers that meant nothing. Why didn't you ask for help? He asked, his voice strained. Michelle gave a small, almost confused look. I did, she said. Andrew frowned slightly. With who? She hesitated, then answered simply. People. And that one word carried everything. Rejection. Indifference. Being overlooked. Andrew didn't ask what happened next. He didn't need to, because he could see it. In the way she spoke. In the way she held herself. In the way she had walked into a cafe, with coins, trying to buy love. That's why you came today? He asked quietly. Michelle nodded. I thought, maybe if I tried one more time, she said. Her voice softened. Someone would say yes. Andrew looked down at the purse again. Those coins weren't just money. They were hope. Collected piece by piece. Risked in one moment. And now sitting between them like a question neither of them could ignore anymore. I don't need a perfect life, Michelle added after a moment. I just don't want to be alone anymore. Andrew felt that. Deeply. Because for all his wealth, for all his control, that was the one thing he understood better than anyone. Slowly, carefully, Andrew reached across the table. Not to take the money. Not to push it away. But to rest his hand gently over hers. Michelle looked up, surprised. Her eyes searching his. Andrew's voice was quiet. Unsteady. But real. You shouldn't have had to go through that alone, he said. And for the first time, he wasn't speaking as a stranger. He was speaking as someone who understood loss. Who understood emptiness. Who understood what it meant to be left behind. Michelle didn't pull her hand away. She held on. And this time, Andrew didn't hesitate. Speech balloon. Do you think Andrew is starting to see himself in Michelle? Or is this connection about to change everything? Tell me your thoughts. The storm outside had stopped screaming, but it hadn't left. It lingered in the distance, like something exhausted, still breathing heavily after a long fight. Inside the cafe, the candlelight had grown steadier now. Wax dripped slowly down glass holders, forming tiny rivers that no one paid attention to. The world felt suspended. Not peaceful. Not chaotic. Just paused. Andrew still hadn't moved his hand away. Neither had Michelle. It wasn't a conscious decision anymore. It was simply there. Like something that had always been missing finally finding its place. Michelle glanced down at their hands. Then up at him. You're still here, she said softly, almost like she was confirming reality. Andrew gave a faint nod. I said I would stay, he replied. Michelle blinked. That's new, she whispered. He frowned slightly. What is? People usually leave after they say things like that. Andrew didn't respond immediately. Because she wasn't wrong. And that realization sat heavier than he expected. I'm not people, he said finally. Michelle studied him for a moment. Then very quietly she asked, Then what are you? The question wasn't challenging. It was curious. Careful. Andrew leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. I don't know anymore, he admitted. That honesty surprised even him. Michelle smiled faintly at that. A real smile this time. Not hopeful. Not forced. Just soft. That's okay, she said. Andrew looked at her. Is it? She nodded. My mom used to say adults don't always know what they are either, she said. They just pretend longer. A pause. Then she added, I think you're pretending less than most people. Andrew almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he just shook his head slightly. You're too observant for your age. Michelle shrugged. I had time. That sentence carried weight. More than it should have. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was different now. Filled with unspoken understanding. Andrew slowly withdrew his hand, but only so he could lean forward again. resting his elbows on the table. So what do you like? He asked. Michelle blinked. What? Food. Games. Anything, he clarified. What makes you happy? She thought for a moment. Longer than expected. I like stories, she said finally. Andrew raised an eyebrow. Stories. She nodded. When someone tells them, she said. It feels like I'm not just stuck in mine. Andrew felt something shift in his chest again. That's oddly specific, he said softly. Michelle smiled slightly. I listen a lot. Of course she did. Andrew looked away for a moment, rubbing his jaw. I used to read stories to someone, he said quietly. Michelle didn't interrupt. Just waited. My daughter, he added. The words came out slower than he intended. He hadn't said them out loud in a long time. Michelle tilted her head slightly. Where is she? Andrew's eyes darkened slightly. She's not here anymore. Michelle didn't press. She just nodded, like she understood that kind of absence. She must have liked your voice, Michelle said after a moment. Andrew let out a quiet, humorless breath. I don't think she cared about the voice, he said. She just liked that I stayed. That sentence hung in the air longer than anything else. Michelle looked down at the table, then said softly, Staying is important. Andrew looked at her. Yes, he admitted. A pause. Then, I didn't always stay when I should have. The honesty surprised even him, but it felt necessary. Michelle didn't judge him. She just nodded. Then you understand, she said gently. That landed deeper than expected. Because he did. More than he wanted to admit. A waiter brought over 2 cups of warm milk without asking. Michelle looked at it like it was something rare. Is this for us? She asked. The waiter smiled kindly. On the house, he said before walking away. Michelle carefully wrapped her hands around the cup. Warmth spread into her fingers. She closed her eyes for a second. Just a second. And Andrew watched her. Watched the way her shoulders relaxed. The way her breathing slowed. The way something inside her softened. It made something inside him ache. You don't get things like this often, Andrew said quietly. Michelle opened her eyes. No, she said simply. But I remember them when I do. Andrew nodded slowly. That's good, he said. Michelle looked at him again. You don't remember good things? Andrew hesitated, then answered honestly. Not as many as I should. A pause. Then Michelle said something that surprised him again. I can help you remember. He looked at her. What? I can tell you stories, she said. If you want. Andrew stared at her for a moment. Then against everything in him, he smiled. Small. Real. You tell me stories? He asked. Michelle nodded proudly. I'm very good at repeating things I hear. That made him chuckle. Soft, brief, but real. It was the first genuine laugh he'd had in a long time. Outside, the rain had fully stopped. But neither of them noticed yet. Because something else had taken its place. Not noise. Not silence. But connection. Fragile. New. Alive. Michelle, Andrew said after a moment. Yes. If I had met you, under different circumstances. He paused, carefully choosing his words. Do you think we would still be sitting here like this? Michelle thought about it. Then nodded. Yes, she said confidently. Andrew frowned slightly. Why? Because you would still look like someone who needs a story, she replied. That stopped him completely. He leaned back in his chair, staring at her. This child, this small, fragile, unbelievably strong child, had seen through him faster than anyone in years. And instead of fear, she offered warmth. I don't know what happens next, Andrew said quietly. Michelle nodded. That's okay. I might not be able to give you everything you want. I don't want everything, she said. Just a little. A pause. Then she added softly, and someone who doesn't leave when it gets quiet. Andrew felt that sentence settle into him. Deep. Permanent. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. But something had changed. Not the world. Not the storm. Not even the situation. But them. And for the first time in a very long time, Andrew didn't feel like he was sitting across from a stranger. He felt like he was sitting across from someone who had quietly begun to matter. Speech balloon, do you think this bond is strong enough to survive what's coming next? Or is happiness always this fragile? Tell me your thoughts. The cafe had grown quieter now. Not because people had left, but because something in the air had changed. The kind of change people feel before they understand it. Andrew noticed it first. A man in a dark coat standing near the entrance. Still. Watching. Not ordering anything. Not moving. Just looking. At them. Andrew's instincts tightened immediately. Michelle, he said softly. Don't look. But it was too late. She had already turned. And her small body stiffened instantly. Color drained from her face. The cup in her hands trembled slightly. Andrew followed her gaze. The man stepped forward. Slowly. Deliberately. Michelle. The man said. His voice was calm. Too calm. Controlled. Like someone trying very hard not to break something fragile. Michelle shrank slightly into Andrew's coat. Andrew's jaw tightened. Do you know him? He asked her quietly. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. The man approached their table. Andrew stood halfway instinctively. Protective. Alert. Stay back, Andrew said firmly. The man held up a hand. I'm not here for trouble, he said. But his eyes never left Michelle. That alone was enough to make Andrew distrust him. Then state your business, Andrew replied coldly. The man hesitated. Then said, I'm her uncle. Silence. That word didn't land gently. It struck. Michelle flinched at it. Her fingers tightened around Andrew's sleeve like it was the only thing holding her in place. Andrew looked down at her immediately. Is that true? He asked softly. Michelle shook her head quickly. No. Her voice was small. Barely there. But it was enough. The man exhaled sharply. She ran away, he said. After everything that happened with her mother, she disappeared. Andrew's eyes narrowed. And you're just now looking for her? The man's expression darkened slightly. We've been looking, he said. But she keeps hiding. Andrew looked back at Michelle. Something inside him shifted again, but this time it wasn't warmth. It was anger. Controlled. Dangerous. Michelle, Andrew said gently. Look at me. She did. Her eyes were wide. Unsteady. Do you want to go with him? Andrew asked. The question hung in the air. Heavy. Important. Michelle hesitated. And in that hesitation, everything cracked. I have to take her, the man said firmly. She's a minor. I'm her legal guardian now. Andrew turned sharply. You don't get to decide that here. The man frowned. You're not involved in this. Andrew stepped forward. Now fully standing. I am now. That silence that followed was different. Tense. Sharp. Like something about to break completely. Michelle suddenly stood up too. No, she said loudly. Both men turned to her. Her hands were shaking. But her voice wasn't. I don't want to go, she said again. The man's expression hardened. Michelle, stop this. You don't understand. I understand enough, she snapped. That surprised even Andrew. She wasn't crying anymore. She was angry. Small. But burning. You weren't there, she said. You weren't there when she got sick. You weren't there when she needed help. You weren't there when I was alone. Each word came faster. Heavier. Pain spilling out like it had been trapped too long. Andrew stayed still. Listening. Not interrupting. Because this wasn't his moment. It was hers. The man tried to step closer. Enough, he said sharply. But Andrew moved instantly between them. No, Andrew said firmly. You stop. The man looked at him now. Really looked. You think you can just interfere because you feel sorry for her? Andrew didn't blink. I think I can interfere because she doesn't feel safe with you. That hit harder than expected. The man's expression tightened. You don't know what's best for her. Andrew's voice lowered. I know what she just told me. Silence. Michelle suddenly grabbed Andrew's hand. Tightly. Like she was afraid the world might pull her away again. I don't want to leave, she said quietly. Not to the man. To Andrew. The words weren't loud. But they were final. The cafe went completely still. Even the sound of rain outside felt distant now. The man exhaled sharply. "This is not over," he said. Andrew didn't respond. He didn't need to. The man looked at Michelle one last time, then turned and walked out. The bell above the door rang sharply as it closed behind him. And just like that, the tension snapped. Michelle's knees gave slightly. Andrew caught her immediately. "Hey," he said softly. "You're okay." But she wasn't really listening. Her breathing was uneven. Fast. Like everything she had held in for years had finally broken loose. "I thought he would take me," she whispered. Andrew knelt slightly so he was at her level. "No one is taking you anywhere you don't want to go," he said firmly. Michelle looked at him, her eyes searching. "Promise." Andrew didn't hesitate. "I promise." And for the first time, she believed it. But Andrew's phone buzzed suddenly. Once. Then again. He frowned, pulling it out. Messages. Missed calls. His assistant. His lawyer. News alerts. His name. Attached to headlines he didn't recognize yet. Andrew's expression changed slightly. Michelle noticed. "What is it?" she asked quietly. Andrew didn't answer immediately. Then he showed her the screen. One headline was visible. Billionaire Andrew Hale seen with missing child. Authorities may investigate. Michelle blinked. Confused. "Is that you?" Andrew nodded slowly. "Yes." Silence. Then she whispered. "Are you in trouble because of me?" That question hit harder than anything else that day. Andrew closed his eyes for a moment. Then opened them again. "No," he said. A pause. Then more firmly. "No. You didn't do anything wrong." But even as he said it, he knew the world outside this cafe would not see it that way. The storm might have ended outside, but another one was just beginning. Speech balloon. Do you think Andrew is ready for the consequences of protecting Michelle? Or is the world about to tear them apart? Tell me below. The cafe felt different now. Not quieter. Not louder. Just heavier. Like the air itself had absorbed everything that had just happened, and didn't know how to let it go. Michelle sat very still. Andrew's coat still wrapped around her, too big for her small frame. But she didn't care anymore. Because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about running away. She was thinking about staying. Andrew stood near the window, phone in hand. The screen kept lighting up. Call after call. Message after message. His world was no longer quiet. It was collapsing into noise. "Sir, the board is requesting an immediate statement. Legal team says you must return. The media is outside your residence. Authorities are asking questions." Each message tightened something inside his chest. But his eyes kept drifting back to Michelle. She was watching him. Waiting. Not demanding. Just hoping he would still be there when she looked again. Andrew turned off the phone. Silence returned instantly. Not peace. But choice. A real one. He walked back to the table and sat down slowly. Michelle straightened slightly. "You're leaving?" she asked quietly. Andrew shook his head. "No." A pause. Then he added, "But I have to decide something." Michelle frowned slightly. "What?" Andrew leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. His voice lowered. "Everything I've built, everything I am known for, is outside that door," he said. "And right now it's all demanding I walk back to it." Michelle stayed silent, listening. "I could go back," he continued. "Fix the headlines. Explain things. Clean this up." His jaw tightened slightly. "And you'd be taken somewhere safe. Proper care. People trained to handle situations like yours." Michelle's fingers tightened slightly around the sleeve of his coat. "But that's not what you want," he said softly. It wasn't a question. Michelle shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. Andrew nodded, as if he already knew. There was a long silence between them, the kind that forces truth to the surface. Andrew looked down at the table, then said quietly, "I don't know how to be what you need." Michelle tilted her head. "I don't need perfect," she said softly. "I've heard that before," Andrew replied. "But you didn't hear me," she said. That made him look up. Michelle shifted slightly forward. "You think I chose you because you were the only option," she said. Andrew didn't respond. But that's not true, she continued. I chose you because when you looked at me, you didn't look away first. That hit deep. Andrew exhaled slowly. Michelle's voice softened. Most people do, she added. Silence. Andrew leaned back slightly, rubbing his forehead. This is bigger than just you and me now, he said. Michelle nodded. I know. That answer surprised him. You do. Yes, she said simply. People are angry when you do something different. Andrew almost smiled at that. Almost. You shouldn't talk like that, he said quietly. Like what? Like you're used to it. Michelle looked down for a moment, then said, I am. That word landed hard. Andrew stood up again, turning away slightly. He ran a hand through his hair. For the first time he looked tired. Not powerful. Not controlled. Just human. I can't promise you an easy life, he said. Michelle stood up too. I don't want easy, she replied. He turned back toward her. You might hate me one day. I might, she agreed. That honesty surprised him. But I won't be alone, she added. Silence. Andrew stared at her for a long time. Really stared. This small child had walked into his life with coins and a broken voice. And now she was asking him to make a choice that could destroy everything he had built. Everything except everything that actually mattered. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He didn't check it. He already knew what it would say. Pressure. Consequences. Warnings. Instead, he knelt down in front of Michelle. At her level. For the first time, not as a billionaire. Not as a man with control. But as someone standing at a crossroads. I need you to understand something, he said quietly. Michelle nodded. I'm listening. If I do this, he continued. If I stay involved in your life, it won't be simple. She nodded again. I know. Andrew frowned slightly. You don't know what I might lose. Michelle looked at him carefully. Do you know what I've already lost? That question stopped him completely. Silence stretched. Long. Honest. Heavy. Andrew's expression softened slightly. Then something inside him gave way. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But completely. He exhaled slowly. I don't want you to be alone anymore, he said finally. Michelle blinked. Hope flickering again. But I also don't know how to do this right. Michelle stepped closer. You just stay, she said. Andrew let out a small breath. That's it. She nodded. That's it. For a moment, he didn't move. Didn't speak. Just looked at her. Then slowly, he nodded. Once. Outside the cafe, the world waited. Inside, something irreversible had just happened. Not a rescue. Not a contract. Not a decision made from logic. But something far more dangerous. A promise made from feeling. Andrew stood up. And for the first time, he didn't turn toward the door. Speech balloon. If you were Andrew, would you risk everything for someone like Michelle? Or is this the beginning of something the world won't forgive? Tell me your thoughts. Morning came quietly. Not like a dramatic sunrise or a sudden shift in the world. But slowly, gently, as if the night itself had finally grown tired of holding on. The cafe door opened with a soft chime. This time there was no storm. Only silence. And consequence. Andrew stood just outside the cafe for a moment, Michelle beside him. The air felt different now. Heavier in a way that wasn't emotional anymore, but real. A few meters away, black cars were already parked. Too many. Men in suits. Phones in hands. Waiting. Watching. His world had arrived to collect him. Michelle noticed first. She grabbed his sleeve immediately. They're here, she whispered. Andrew followed her gaze. His jaw tightened slightly. Yes, he said. A pause. Then softer. I knew they would be. One of the men stepped forward. Sir, the man said quickly, respectful but tense. We need you to come with us immediately. The situation is escalating. The board. Andrew raised a hand. Not now. The man stopped. Confused. Sir. Andrew didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on Michelle. Because this was the real moment. Not the storm. Not the cafe. Not the arguments. This. I need 5 minutes. Andrew said firmly. The men hesitated, then stepped back. Just enough. Andrew knelt down in front of Michelle again. Like before. But this time it felt different. He wasn't just meeting her at her level. He was choosing her from it. You're about to see a lot of things you don't understand, he said quietly. Michelle nodded slowly. I know. You might hear things about me. I know. You might not always feel safe. That made her pause. Just slightly. But she still nodded. I know. Andrew studied her for a long moment. Then exhaled slowly. You're very sure for someone your age, he said softly. Michelle gave the smallest smile. I had practiced being unsure. That made something in him tighten. He reached into his pocket. For a moment he hesitated, then pulled out a card. Not a business card. A personal one. He placed it gently in her small hand. Keep this, he said. Michelle looked at it. Then back at him. What is it? It means if you ever need me, you can find me. Her fingers closed around it carefully, like it mattered more than anything else she had ever held. Andrew stood slowly. This was it. The line. The separation. The world waiting on one side. And something fragile, real, and unexpected on the other. Michelle looked up at him. For the first time since she met him. She looked uncertain. Are you coming back? She asked softly. Andrew didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was complicated. The world outside would take him. Punish him. Test him. But nothing there felt as clear as this moment. So he said the only thing he could. Yes, he said. A pause. Then more firmly. I will. Michelle nodded slowly, as if she was storing that promise somewhere safe inside her. She stepped forward and hugged him. Small arms. Strong grip. No hesitation. Andrew froze for a second, then slowly, carefully wrapped his arms around her. Not like a billionaire. Not like a man in control, but like someone who finally understood what it meant to hold on. I don't want to forget this, Michelle whispered. You won't, Andrew said quietly. And for the first time, he believed it too. When they finally separated, Michelle stepped back, still holding his card, still watching him, still there. Andrew turned toward the waiting cars. The world. The consequences. Everything he had built. But something had changed. He wasn't walking back as the same man. Not anymore. He stopped halfway. Looked back once more. Michelle was still standing there. Small. Brave. Real. And for the first time in his life, Andrew didn't feel like he was leaving something behind. He felt like he was finally carrying something forward. He turned back fully and walked toward the cars. Not away from her, but with her. Days later, the news would say many things. Confusion, scandal, questions. But none of them would capture the truth. Because the truth wasn't in headlines. It was in a promise made in a quiet cafe during a storm. And a little girl who once tried to buy a father. And found one who chose her instead. Speech balloon. If love finds you when you least expect it. Do you think it's fate, or something you were always meant to survive? Tell me your thoughts below. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. Your time, your support, and your presence here mean more than words can say. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or kept you watching, please make sure to subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a new upload. Until next time, stay blessed, stay strong, and keep believing in love. See you in the next story.